Now, welcome, everybody, back to Proline this week. You can see we have a little bit different format. We're doing this off of our computers, but still the same good information, same winners, and lots of good gaming talk in the middle of some of the analysis that we have. Last week wasn't the best week for Dave or I in the colleges. I came back in the pros pretty strong. I did have Dallas, which I was real wrong about, but I also have a lot of other winners. Then Monday night, Kansas City was very good to me as well. Thank you, North Turner. But talk about somebody that did well last week was Al McMorty, Big Al. His Vegas Confidential parlay, pretty awesome here. He had the over in the Arizona-Baltimore game in the pros, and that was way over. And then in the colleges, well, actually, prior to that on Saturday, he had Vanderbilt plus the points against Arkansas. They had a big lead. Arkansas came back and actually won the game, but Vandy covered very easy. So that was a nice big parlay for you, Al. Great job there. And
thanks.
I have to mention this terrible record he has in his Vegas strip moves. I mean, it's almost embarrassing, Al. You're 42-13 in Vegas strip moves over the last couple of years. You're only 29 games above 500. Why would anybody even want to tell anybody about that?
Oh, well, they should keep it a secret so they keep all the money to themselves.
That's pretty damn awesome record. So, I mean, Al's picks are for sale right here online, ProLineTV.com, and you can also call the phone number for his advertisements. And Al, what do you got going this week?
Well, after that Vegas Confidential parlay of the year on pretty much the two easiest winners of your life with Vanderbilt and the over in the Arizona-Baltimore game, we're going to have our Vegas Confidential NFL Game of the Year. Last week, those two plays were out of systems that combined for a 43-0 record. This play on Sunday, it's out of a system that is 26-0, going all the way back to 1980. And the 27th winner in a row is our Game of the Year, and it's only $19, and it's at 866-896-1628.
David, like I said, last night, but I've known you for a lot of years and back pretty well, and kind of like the New England Patriots do after a loss. How are you bouncing back this week?
Yeah, it wasn't a good weekend. It was my worst week of the year for sure. And nobody wins all the time, including me. Never said that I do, by the way. So it's not a disaster by any means. Started off this week with a real nice play in Northern Illinois on Tuesday, so things are right back where they're supposed to be. And the special I'm offering is about as inexpensive as you can possibly get. I've got 3 guaranteed winners for $3. That's pretty good. All 3 games have to win, or you get the next 3 games completely free of charge. And all you need to do is call 1-866-841-1665. That's 1-866-841-1665 to get these free plays. These 3 plays for $3. Also, I do want to throw in my free pick phone, 1-888-712-6800. There are free plays on that line on tape every single day. And on Saturday, by the way, I'm going to have one of the biggest college games in a long time on tape free. So free pick phone is 1-888-712-6800. That's on tape. 3 guaranteed winners for $3 at 1-866-841-1665. Jim, you found some games that you really like this weekend because you got a conference game of the year, and a game this big at such a small price. That's a pretty good offer.
Well, it really is, Dave. I mean, this is one of those games that a lot of my clients put pretty big money on it, as do I. Like I said, we're coming off a so-so week, but we've had a good season, and for a lot of people, that's pretty good because a lot of people are not doing that well this year. But we're doing very well, and November is here, and that means both turkey and profits. The profits start this Saturday. For those who haven't been with me, when you call 1-866-841-1655 for one of my top-rated conference games of the year, and it's only $10. Plus, when you call, you'll get 2 free bonus plays as well at no additional charge. That's 3 big games, 3 big winners. You just make the call to 1-866-841-1655. Like I said, this one particular game, it's where everything matches up, Dave, and I'm looking at the different angles and the trends and the histories and the matchups, and it just lines up, and the number's out. We know what the number is. I've seen the initial moves on the game, and I feel very confident about this game. So make the call for these 3 big games, 1-866-841-1655. And don't forget, we haven't been mentioning this the last couple of weeks, but for free winners each and every day, just text WINNER, WINNER, to 313131, and we'll send you right to your cell phone each and every day free winners. Now, as far as some winners for this week,
by the way,
we're going to start off, Al. Pardon me?
I just wanted to mention something, because it has nothing to do with any games, but this is the first week we haven't done this in the studio. And I forgot why I like this so much better. In the studio, I feel like we're broadcasting from the Masai Mara in Kenya. It's like 9,000 degrees in there. Now, this is a lot nicer. So I think my thought process will actually be cleaner here as well.
Well, it's a lot easier to actually work like this, because we have I got all these monitors in front of me, and all the information is right there. And it really doesn't matter where we do this from. It's all about what the viewer gets out of it. And we could be doing this in a sandbox, and as long as we're giving out good betting information that ends up making people money. And that's what we're all about. So I like doing it this way as well. I mean, I like the studio as well, but it is really hot in there because the lights are so darn hard. And that's why I gave up wearing the coat, because I was perspiring so much I couldn't stand it. I was about ready to pass out. Al, there's a game this week. 2 weeks ago, Texas Tech upset Oklahoma. And then they go home and they're a big favorite over Iowa State. And I mean, talk about stubbing your toe. I mean, I understand this kind of stuff happens. We've seen it for the last however long we've been doing this, but they lost at home as a big favorite, 41-7. And this is an up-tempo offense that Tommy Tuberville has. He's got 8 starters on offense, 7 on defense from last year, averaging 39 points a game, 359 yards passing per game, number 5 in the nation. How in the hell do they only get 7 points to a team like Iowa State and stub their toe?
That's just one of those games where you just, it's so much of an outlier that you just throw it out, because they failed to cover by more than 40 points, Jim, when they were favored. And you just don't see games like that very often. And it's so unusual. I went to my database and I looked up, how do teams do, when they were favored in a game and failed to cover by 40 points and also lost the game straight up. And it just doesn't happen very often, but these teams really do well the next time out. They're 63-35 against the spread. So it only happens about 3 times a year, but they almost cover the spread, almost 67%. It's about 64% at 63-35. So, that's nothing to sneeze at. And I think Texas Tech is in a real good rebound situation, especially because last week's game was somewhat predictable. I mean, you just beat Oklahoma in one of the biggest upsets, if not the biggest upset of the year. So it really wasn't a surprise that they failed to cover that game. I guess it was a surprise that they lost by 34 points. It wouldn't have been a surprise if they'd lost by a field goal. It was really the magnitude of the loss. So I think they come out here, and I think they play a very, very good game. I don't know if they'll win the game straight up, but I got to imagine they're going to come within 3 or 4 points and cover this double-digit spread.
Well, I agree with you, Al.
It is kind of... Go ahead, Dave.
Well, I was going to say, this was, of course, an extreme example of a bounce. The team played basically a perfect game in destroying Oklahoma the previous week. This is a nothing game for them against Iowa State. It's not like Texas Tech is playing for anything big. And they've got the Texas game on deck. Talk about getting caught in a sandwich. The other thing is that you mentioned that this is an extreme case where a team that's favored by a bunch loses the game by an inordinate margin, and that doesn't happen very often. But if you look at any typical college football season, when a team plays considerably below where they're supposed to play, or considerably above where they're supposed to play, there's a bounce effect. There just is. It doesn't happen all the time, but it happens more often than it doesn't. So what Texas Tech is in effect doing is they're following a predictable pattern. They're just doing it in utterly spectacular fashion. And that pattern does indicate that they will play better here. I think they'll cover the spread as well. I don't think they'll win the game, and the stats don't suggest that they should win the game. Texas is a better football team than Texas Tech, but it's a big number, and as is often the case, we see this all the time, adjustments from the previous week, because the bettors only remember the last thing they saw. And what's happened here is that you've got a line that's actually a couple points off where it should be. So good situation and a favorable line. That's a good value. And winning at sports betting is all about getting value in the right situation. I think this game has both. So I like Texas Tech. I'm with you, Al.
The interesting thing about this, I agree with both of you. Texas opened 10, went up to 12.5. I see a lot of 12s out there right now. The total is 62.5 down to 60 basically. I mean, Texas has had the quandary with the quarterbacks, but Texas Tech doesn't have that issue. They're actually pretty solid there, and you got to look for them to bounce back. When you think about it, they played one of the number one teams in the country with Oklahoma, and they're sitting looking at their in-state rival where Texas up on deck. Iowa State didn't matter very much. They probably just mailed it in, and that's how they got blown out. They did mail it in. I'm not sure they ever went to the post office, but they mailed it in somehow. We got another game to talk about here that's pretty interesting as well. After South Carolina lost to Auburn, they made a quarterback switch. They had a kid named Garcia that they actually, I think, dismissed. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dave.
He's good.
They dismissed from the team, and they're using another gentleman as well right now. Playing much better. They only won 14-3 last week, but that was on the road at Tennessee. Arkansas is pretty tough at home. This is the other side of the game that you had last week, Al, with Vanderbilt. Arkansas went way down to Vanderbilt and bounced back in that game late, and they won the game pretty well. Won the game by they got a lot of points, but they won the game by 3 points.
They were really lucky to win that game, and Vanderbilt missed a chip shot field goal at the end of the game. I think Arkansas might have been looking ahead to this game, and we'll see what happens in this one, Al and Jim. But South Carolina is just not the same team they were earlier. I think in many ways they're better without Garcia. Garcia had a lot of talent, but I don't know how else to describe it. The kid's kind of an ass. All right, suspended. He's had alcohol, all kinds of issues. I think he had 6 suspensions, and finally got nailed for 2 different things. And Spurrier said, you have to go. So, but the bigger loss for them is Marcus Lattimore, who's a great running back. He's out for the year. He blew out his knee. Tough luck for one of the most talented players in the country. However, nobody on the defense is missing. This defense is really good. I'm not really sure what to make of Arkansas. They're a team that's I haven't been involved in their games, to be honest with you, and it's part of the reason is I haven't been able to get a good read on the team. So I haven't lost anything with them. I haven't won anything with them either. I've just been on the sidelines of most of their games, and I'll probably be there again in this game. It looks to me like a game that probably is going to be decided very late. So any points you can get are a bonus in a contest that could go either way. It's a lean to me on South Carolina, Jim. Nothing real strong here. I can't try and pump this up. There's a couple of SEC games I like this weekend. This isn't one of them.
Well, this game opened 5 and pretty much has stayed there, and the total's the same pretty much as well, 53. South Carolina doesn't have that type of an offense to put up a lot of points, but Arkansas sure does. And at home, I mean, they fell behind to Texas A&M as well. I mean, it was still a big score, 42-38. I mean, they're getting yardage, like almost 600 yards sometimes. I mean, this is a very powerful offense against the team that doesn't look like has much of an offense. But like you said, they have a very strong defense. Tough game to handicap. The way they play at home, strong team, but that defense is going to keep South Carolina in the game. Al, you have any thoughts on it, or just want to pass on it?
Yeah, well, my thought is at that number 53, I like the under in the game. So
that's probably a good side to take. You're not going to get a lot of points off South Carolina, and they just might be able to hold it down. We have some topics to talk about. We always, in the middle before we go to the pros, we talk about some betting and wagering things. We're kind of halfway through the pro season, and some interesting things going on out there. I mean, we talked about bye weeks, and I think, Al, you were pretty right on this. We talked about bye weeks and how bad they were doing, poorly they were doing. I think there were 3-9 going into the week, and then there's 6 bye teams coming out of the previous week. But this week, I think they were 5-1. So, Al, you said the public was overreacting to that, and you were right.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm a numbers guy, and for me, one of the things that people most overreact to, Jim, is small sample size. And, I've got, my database has thousands of games, and when someone says, well, this is, 1-5 or 2-7, the first thing I think about is who cares? It's just such a small sample size. You have to look at a large sample size. So that wasn't really a surprise to me that eventually, the worm turned, this year with the bye teams doing better.
We saw some adjustments made as well. Andy Reid, looked like a lot of coaches and staffs were having trouble with this new rule of mandated rest. Well, Andy Reid took it a step further. He gave the team an entire week off. Hey, get out of here. Have some fun, relax. Boy, it didn't work. So I would think that a lot of coaches now will remember that for the future because Andy Reid, despite what the fans in Philadelphia think sometimes, Andy Reid's one of the best football coaches alive. He's terrific. And nice job by them. The Eagles may have been a disappointment to this point, being a game under 500. They might not lose many the rest of the way. A lot of things that we've seen in the first half are not necessarily going to be the case in the second half. That plays just what into you just said, Al. People make judgments. Forget just the spread stuff. People make judgments about what's going to happen based on win-loss records over a very brief period of time, and they're not right. And some of the teams that are out there really playing well in the NFL in the first half will fade in the second half. A few others who have struggled in the first half, they're going to come around. The Eagles probably at the top of that list. They're too talented not to.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the Eagles-Dallas game. I mean, that was I was totally wrong. This is the worst pick I've had in the pros in a long, long time. I really thought Dallas could play in that game and it would be a very tough game, both ways. But I didn't see anybody. I mean, they were up, I think, 34-0 at one point. I think the final score was 34-7 or something like that. And but how does that happen when you have quality athletes on both sides of the ball, supposedly quality coaching, and it's just one bad day? Is that what's going on there? Is this Philadelphia team that good and this Dallas team that bad, or we just aberration? You just throw it out.
I think it's an aberration to some extent. I don't think if Philadelphia plays Dallas 8 more times this year, you'll ever see a 27-point margin between the teams. And it was worse than that because, as you mentioned, Dallas rallied to put the last 7 on the board. But it's just one of those games where everything went wrong for Dallas early on. They didn't seem to be particularly well prepared to play the game. I think Rob Ryan needs to learn to shut his mouth because he did a good job of firing up the Eagles with his By the way, you don't play, Rob, okay? You're a coach. You don't play. Leave the smack talk to the players. They're the ones that have put their ass out there, not you. It always bugs me when coaches do that. It's like me saying we when I talk about the Red Sox. I don't play for the Red Sox, okay? So when I say we, I got to slap myself in the face because I'm not part of the team. The coach should probably just leave the commentary. How about this? Coach your own team and stop making comments about the other team. That said, so much for the Eagle problems. I mean, Castillo, I guess, is now a great defensive coordinator, or defensive coordinator after he didn't have any idea for a while for the Eagles, and they're a dangerous team. But I wanted to touch on a couple of other teams to kind of just see what you guys think of. Let's take three teams that have been big surprises in the first half: Buffalo, Cincinnati, and San Francisco. Any of them for real or fakes? I think one's for real, one I'm not sure, and one I think is a phony. I think this 49er team is legit. They're incredibly physical. They play like Pittsburgh does. They play at Pittsburgh-Baltimore style. Alex Smith is serviceable. And I think this team's going to keep winning games. I don't think they'll do worse than the number 2 seed in the NFC. Buffalo, I think, is okay. And I think they're going to be a playoff contender. I like Fitzpatrick, and I think Shane Gailey's actually doing a nice job. But I'm not buying Cincinnati, guys. I think the Bengals, hats off to Marvin Lewis, and Andy Dalton's an impressive young quarterback. But I don't see this as a team that's got long-range potential this year, and I think they're going to start losing some games. What do you guys think?
Well, Al, you want to step in? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think Dave, you hit the nail on the head with each of the three teams, or all of the three teams. I completely agree. I don't think any of the teams, though, are Super Bowl material. I think San Francisco will get the number 2 seed, as you do. I don't know if, first of all, I think Green Bay, could always get upset, say, by Philadelphia if they meet in the, in the conference semifinals. But if it turns out to be a Green Bay San Francisco game, I can't see San Francisco going into Lambeau and beating Green Bay. So, I think San Francisco is legit. I just don't know if it's this year that they're going to be able to win the Super Bowl or even get to the Super Bowl.
If we're talking about Super Bowl for these three teams, I don't see it. But if you're talking about, this has been a league for many years now where teams go from the bottom to the top. And it only takes one or two players, sometimes a coaching change, the gelling. You could be looking at the same situation with Carolina. They're not winning, but they're playing pretty well.
Yeah.
And you get another year with that new head coach, and Cam Newton stays healthy, and they got Steve Smith, and the running game that they have, they gel. They could be at the top of the league next year. That's the kind of league we have. Now, if you're talking about quality quarterbacks, there's only a few really tremendously talented quarterbacks in the league. 2 weeks ago, we changed 6 quarterback positions. There were 6 different quarterbacks playing. You take, for example, Oakland, who has one of the strongest running games in football right now, and they had a marginal quarterback with Campbell, and he got hurt. You bring in the backup Bowler, I think it was Bowler, and now they signed Palmer. Well, Palmer, the question is, he still good? They signed up Hushmanzada yesterday, which is going to help them because he's used to playing with him. He's an across-the-middle guy that he can get rid of the ball real quick to on an open route. And that's going to make a big difference. They might be a team that we could be looking at late. Obviously, they're in a battle with San Diego for that division and Kansas City as well. But Oakland could come out of that with Palmer at quarterback. And their running game is tremendous. And like you said with San Francisco, they were also very physical. There's a lot of surprise teams that could end up in these playoffs and possibly get to the Super Bowl. But they don't have the quarterback, the Brady, the Breeze, the Aaron Rodgers, or Roethlisberger. Don't forget him. They have the wide receivers now. They've totally changed their game. These are consistent Super Bowl type guys that have been there, done that, against a lot of guys that haven't done it. You talk about Baltimore, and everybody says Baltimore is the best team, and then they flub the duck, and they look real bad at, I guess, Jacksonville a couple of weeks ago, and last week half a game against Arizona. And Flacco, I don't know what to make of Flacco.
No, me neither.
He came on, He came on with Matt Ryan a couple years ago, and they looked like world beaters. But right now, I don't think they're world beaters. I think they're just average kind of guys that have good days and bad days. But the real primo guys, maybe Cam Newton will develop into one. Now, when you talk about Cincinnati and you talk about San Francisco and Buffalo has one of the smartest quarterbacks in the business. He's definitely Harvard grad, very intelligent kid. They've got an offense that can stretch you. They make you have to score points. You are not going to stop this team. They can score. The problem is their defense isn't too good. It was good enough to shut out Washington, but okay, that may not matter very much. But they're playing for Chan Gailey. They like Gailey, and that's important. San Francisco, you had a guy out there with Alex Smith who was the number one draft choice a few years ago, 7 years ago. He had 7 offensive coordinators, one each year. He constantly had a new playbook, never had a chance to develop. He seems to have what he needs right now, and he's playing very, very well. And they are physical, they're well coached. And the third team that you mentioned, Cincinnati, I was a big fan of, what's his name, Dave, the quarterback?
Carson Palmer? When he was there?
For Cincinnati.
Oh, Andy Dalton.
Now. Andy Dalton.
Yeah.
It just, his name just slipped my mind. I was a big fan of his when he was at TCU.
Yeah. Boy, he's smart.
He manages the game very well. He's got a good enough arm to play in the pros. He makes very good decisions. You know, in the pros, it's a very fast game, and you have to make decisions very quickly. You're reading defenses just like that in seconds. And he does that. They have the best defense in football right now. Now, right. That may be because of who they played, but I think I give them a lot of respect. I think those 3 teams that you mentioned are very legitimate, and I don't think they're going to fall apart. Yeah, I think they're going to be very strong contenders. But Super Bowl champions, no. I don't think they're going to get there yet. But they can definitely, I think they all make the playoffs.
We put a lot of stress on the quarterbacks. And, Alex Smith, what he's doing is he's managing the game extremely well. He's only got 2 picks, and one of those wasn't his fault. It was actually on the receiver. So he's not making mistakes. Sometimes we overlook the quarterback on defense. And boy, San Francisco got one. If you want to talk about the Aaron Rodgers or the Tom Brady or whoever elite quarterback, there is on offense, Patrick Willis has become that type of player on defense. He's absolutely a great player. Wherever the ball is, there's Patrick Willis. I think he makes his whole team better. And they're legit. I mean, it's just hard to believe that Mike Singletary, couldn't bring anything out of this team with all his inspirational stuff. Maybe it's more about X's and O's. And Jim Harbaugh, Al, he knows what he's doing as far as that goes.
Yeah, he does. But, I can't remember. When was the last time we had that kind of team win the Super Bowl? Might have been 2000 with Baltimore and its defense and Trent Dilfer at quarterback, where he just managed the game. So,
okay. No, I misunderstood.
Yeah, it can be done, but it doesn't get done very often. But it would be, maybe this is the year where San Francisco can use that blueprint to get to the title game.
Well, running the ball is a very important factor in football, and whether it be college or pro. And when you look at not Baltimore, but you look at Oakland, you look at Cincinnati, you look at Buffalo. A lot of the teams that run the ball the best have a big edge. Now, they're talking about it being a passing league. Well, it's a passing league to a point. But when you start getting into bad weather and stuff, throwing the ball is kind of rough. They got to be able to run the ball, control the clock, keep your defense off the field for a while. And that's important, too. So we got to look at the fundamentals of football. It doesn't change that much. The rules do change, and that's why some of these things change. But you're looking at a lot of spread offenses and no huddles and things like that. So it has changed, but the fundamental of the game, blocking, tackling, playing good defense, controlling the ball by running it, that's still primo. You got to look at that. We've got a couple games to talk about in the pros, and the first one is, this isn't a very good football team. The Seattle Seahawks, and I don't know what to make of the Cowboys after what they did, but you've got to look at it as an aberration, what we talked about earlier. Seahawks are going to visit Dallas, and they were looking at a 12-point spread. I'll check and see what that is right in the moment. What it is, it's actually 11.5 in most spots right now. There's a couple 12s, but mostly 11.5, and the total's gone up from 42.5 to 44. Now, when you look at the total going up like that, and you kind of analyze the game from that position, you know Seattle doesn't have much of an offense. They just don't score points. The quarterback position, they're not a high-scoring team. So why would this game be going up? Because they think Dallas is going to score a lot of points and maybe bounce back? Because it's across the board. It's gone up 2 to 2.5 points everywhere. So that's interesting look. The Seattle that is Tavares Jackson, Charlie Whitehurst, they don't inspire me much. And when your team is really anxious to get Tavares Jackson back, that might mean you have a problem.
You think?
Dallas goes home. They got a lot. I mean, they have I don't know what the hell happened in Philadelphia, but I'm going to try to get it out of my mind because it cost me money. But, I look for Dallas to bounce back in this game pretty big. It's hard for me to lay points, but I'm just not coming in with the dog here. I'm sorry. Can't do it.
Well, neither am I.
Who else pick up on this?
Well, I think Dallas is going to bounce back. The problem is they put in the number. I think this is it's probably a correct reaction by most people who are looking at it. It's like, well, the Cowboys are really going to be embarrassed off what happened last week in Philadelphia, and they've got a chance to beat up on somebody here. And the odds makers, see, that's the thing. The odds makers know the same thing that everybody else does. In fact, they know more. So they made a big number in this game. And, boy, you're not going to get rich laying double digits in the NFL. I can tell you that. That's not a real good way to go. I do think the game's going to go over, though. Look, I know the Cowboys' defense had a bad game last week. So did the offense. The offense didn't score until basically the end of the game, and it was garbage time. This offense needs to get something going. They should be able to move the ball on Seattle. I think you're going to see DeMarco Murray have a big game carrying the ball. I think that Romo, actually, this is a team he should be able to do things against. In as much as, it kind of, look, I'm not saying Tavares Jackson is the next, he's not a star, okay? But he's better than Charlie Whitehurst. And the team will move the ball more with Jackson. They definitely are a more comfortable-looking team offensively with Jackson. I do think you're going to see points in this game. And, we don't have to worry about weather conditions because of where they're playing. So I think this is a game that does go over the total. I wouldn't be surprised if this is one of those a borderline game on the spread, 30-20, somewhere in that range. That gets it over the total, Al. I'm going to go in that direction on this contest.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier that the odds makers know a lot. Well, they don't know everything. And I did some research probably about 6 or 7 years ago, and I discovered something about certain teams when they get blown out, which is it correlates extremely strongly with a bounce back situation. And this system I have, did you get the phone?
I hung it up.
Okay.
This is modern television, folks.
Yeah. But as I was saying, they don't know everything. And there's this system I have. It's 91-35, and it plays on certain teams that got blown out the previous week. And I'm not going to say that would give it away. And I know that no one in the country knows about this system I have, and no one knows about this certain factor because I read a lot of handicapping material, and no one's ever mentioned it. And this system has Seattle in this ballgame. It's 91-35. It's my best system in the NFL, and I'm going to take the Seahawks.
Wow. That's, I'm going to remember that because I'm not, like I said, I don't like laying double digits. 91-35.
That's pretty good.
And all this system does, Jim, all this system does, in fact, they had 2 plays earlier this year, way back early in the season when you remember I think the Kansas City Chiefs got blown out the week before, and then they lost 20-17 to San Diego, getting 14 points. That was one of its 2 plays this year. The other play it had was on the same day, And it was a similar situation where a team was real ugly and they were getting, double digits, and they I think they might have even won straight up or lost by a couple, but it's a system that plays on certain teams that look ugly and all they do is cover.
Well, anytime you're betting against the public, you do have an edge, and they're definitely going to be betting Dallas in this game, even though there might have been a sharp money line to the downside on this on the dog early, because it went from 12.5 to 11.5. But you can bet the public's coming in on Dallas late. That's for sure. I favor the over in this game as well, Dave. I'm trying to think of the score. If you can get Seattle to get 14 to 17 points, you're looking at Dallas in the 27 to 30 point area, like you had said, 20 to 30. I think the over is the right side, and taking 12 points on a 91 to 35 system is not a bad way to go.
I like that.
The next game we're talking about, I'm sorry?
I said I like that.
The next game, we're talking about one of the teams that is having a really good year. The Bengals are 5-2, 6-1 against the spread, 6-1 over the total. We don't consider them a high-scoring team, but they are 6-1 over the total this year. They're visiting the Titans, and this is a really strange Titan team. They signed this Chris Johnson kid who's been remarkable over the years to a big contract.
Wow.
And you could actually call this the Bernie Madoff NFL scam of the year. This guy is not running the ball at all. I mean, it's like ridiculous what he's doing. So has he quit on Tennessee and wants to go somewhere else, or is he just going to take his money and go off to an island somewhere? But he's not running the ball very well. And when I mentioned earlier about running the football, which is a key that we need to look at, Cincinnati has a big edge in this game when you talk about rushing the football. They run the ball better, and they defend the run very, very well as well. They're a very cohesive group. They played last week on the road, and now they're traveling across the country, second road game in a row. That's not that easy to do, especially cross country. They're catching 3 points. The total went from 40.5 to 42, and some 41.5 as well. And Tennessee is solid 3, but they're at the 3. They're favoring the dog. So that's what we're looking at. We're looking at the Bengals at the Titans. You're looking at 3 and about 41.5. Dave?
Oh,
Al?
okay. Well, I first of all, the Chris Johnson thing. It's bad when the coach has to come out and say, well, he's still my starter. It's not Javon Ringer. Not that there's anything wrong with Javon Ringer, but he's just, kind of he's a backup. All right. He's a guy who can come in and give you 8 carries and get 30 yards during the course of the game. If there's even a consideration that Javon Ringer is going to be your starting running back, you've got some problems. Excellent college runner, very durable, but not really the kind of guy who's going to set the world on fire in the NFL. So it's a mystery to me what's happening with Chris Johnson. Sometimes running backs have a short shelf life. I hope that's not the case with him, because he was really exciting and fun to watch, but he's been awful this year, at least carrying the ball. He's doing a decent job catching the ball out of the backfield. I just got done saying that I'm not buying on the Bengals, and yet here's another game that's very winnable for them. It is their second straight road game. That does bother me a little bit. But listen, they're playing with confidence right now. The team believes in Andy Dalton. Their running game, as you mentioned, they lost Benson last week. He had a suspension. Well, Bernard Scott steps in and he does a fine job. So they've got different guys that can do things back there. And the confidence level is strong right now. I find Tennessee to be one of the tougher teams in the league to handicap because of the big swings with Matt Hasselbeck. He's almost never average. He's either really, really good or really, really bad. And that's tough. Because unless it's a big number game where you can kind of get a feel and say, well, boy, this looks like a defense Hasselbeck can do some damage against, and they're getting points, for instance. Okay, maybe that's when you can step in with Tennessee. But this, I don't know what to make of this, because if Hasselbeck has one of his good games, and Cincinnati's defense is okay, it's not great. If Hasselbeck's on, Tennessee's probably going to win the game, but I don't know if they'll be on or not. And you just look at the last 2 games for Hasselbeck. There it is, his career in microcosm. Awful 2 weeks ago. He comes right back out and has a great game last week. So, there's 32 teams in the NFL. If I eliminate the Titans on most weeks, that still leaves 31 to focus on and try and find a winner. That's generally what I try and do with the Titans. That said, Mike Munchak's doing a really fine job with this team. I don't think I bet against Tennessee here, but I'm not going to lay 3 points with them either. Al, how about you?
Yeah, well, and I tell you, that was brilliant analysis with Hasselbeck. I mean, you hit the nail right on the head there. You did mention it's their second straight road game. That really isn't a factor. It really needs to be 3 road games in a row, like we saw last week with San Diego and Indianapolis. When a team plays 3 road games in a row, that's the point where you want to go against them. Second road game, it's really a non-issue. The line is 3 here, depending on which way the line goes. If it goes to 2.5 or 3.5, might influence me. So I'm going to sit on the sidelines as we record this right now with the lines being on that key number of 3.
You look at Hasselbeck. I mean, he's new to Tennessee. He came out of Seattle. Mike Munchak's the new head coach there. They basically have lost Chris Johnson to, being ineffective. He's there, but they did lose Kenny Britt, who's their best, wide receiver. So, I mean, they signed Donnie Avery, which doesn't replace Kenny Britt in my mind. So we have a lot of question marks about Tennessee. And, when you look at their record, they're 18-42 ATS in their last 60 home games.
Wow.
As a favorite of 3.5. Now, the line has dipped down below 3.5 at this moment, but it's pretty close to that. It's hard to be excited about this team. I was wrong about them a couple of weeks ago. I thought that they would give the Texans a hard time, but they sure didn't. They folded their tent there. They're playing a better football team right now. The Bengals are the better of these 2 football teams. When you look at the defensive side of the ball and you look at the efficiency of Andy Dalton, he has his wide receiver in A.J. Green, who this guy looks like a real superstar.
Boy, does he ever.
Their offensive coordinator, Jay Gruden's doing a good job. He's conservative. They're managing the game. They're 22nd in the league in total yards, but their defense is so good that they're winning games. And their defense is scoring points too, which is how they're getting over the total as often as they do. So, I'm either taking these 3 or I'm not playing. I don't like Tennessee in this spot at all. They're just not consistent enough for me. But, we're going to come right back. We should talk about our best bets.
Yeah.
And Dave, you want to start off with that, or Al? Who wants to go first?
I can go first. I mentioned that my favorite system in the NFL is 91-35. It finally came to me. The other game it had earlier this year was the Seattle-Arizona game, when Seattle upset Arizona's 3.5-point home dogs. I love Seattle here. It's by far and away my best bet.
I'm going to go with Texas Tech. Again, this goes back to the bounce angle, if you want to call it that, theory, whatever. It's just a good rationale. Most bettors, if a team plays a really good game, they want to be on that team. If a team plays a really bad game, they want to be against that team. Probably should be looking the other way on both counts, particularly if it's kind of an aberrational game. I think Texas Tech will rebound in a game they're going to be a lot more focused for. I don't think they can win this game, but they don't have to. They're getting a lot of points from Texas. Should be a good rivalry battle, and I'll take the Red Raiders plus the points to cover the spread. How about you, Jim?
Well, I'm gonna use the same game. I think this is a perfect situation for the bounce. They had the bounce up. They beat Oklahoma. They bounced down. They lose to Iowa State, and they're going to bounce back against a team that probably has inferior quarterbacking. This is a big rivalry game for them. I'm not saying they're going to win the game, but I really do like taking 12 points in a spot like this. And I'm definitely not going to bet on the Dallas Cowboys against Al's 91-35 record. I have it written right down here. I am not betting Dallas. I'm going to probably wait for that line to go back up a little bit and be on the Seahawks as well. But my best bet is Texas Tech. And that's it for our show this week. So thank you, everybody, and we'll be back next week.
See ya.